Ain't no critter more at home on a Halloween night, in the background of a horror film, or the caves of some forgotten beast, than the bat. Bats are the only mammals which adapted to fly, and are the second most diverse groups of mammals. As such, they are a keystone species in much of the world, and are ripe canvases for the rapid-fire smattering of parasites. One such parasite, which swims through the fur of these screaming meemees, is a relative to the humble housefly. This parasite has become so modified as a result of parasitizing bats that it's no longer recognizable as a fly at all. Meet the bat flies. Brand new designs are up on the Edge Redbubble, werewolves, spiders, FedEx amphibians, proto-crocs, and more. Go check out the Redbubble with links in the description and comments section below. The exact evolution of bats is a big mystery. The earliest ancestors of today's bats would have been quite small. Both these ancestral flippy flappers and today's microbats have extremely small, fragile bones that can decay extremely fast. What's more, many species live in places that move so fast they would never even get the chance to be fossilized in the first place. Though it can be speculated they evolved from some kind of arboreal leaping or gliding mammal related to the ungulates and the meat-eaters, it remains a void in the fossil record until it can be filled. What little fossil evidence that is at our disposal sets a time for the appearance of the modern-looking bats at around 55 to 50 million years, with an example like Hasianicteris. Since they certainly evolved over a period of millions of years leading up to this early genus, you can probably say they've been around since the extinction of the non-avian dinosaurs. In all that time, a miniature army of teeny tiny terrors have waged biological warfare against the creatures of the night. Every living thing has some other living thing living in it or on it. Some, like bacteria, have formed symbiotic relationships in the gut to help digest food, while others, like insects and arachnids, have taken advantage of the titanic walking blood bags they share their world with. To attach oneself to a flying beast of burden, and to rely on that beast for sustenance, is the best evolutionary gig any life form could ever hope of. It should therefore come as no surprise that bats, as new to the world as they are, have taken on many hitchhikers in their conquest of the skies. If you've watched my video on ticks, you'll be well aware of the vast diversity of hosts those little crusty blood munchers have taken to. One of those hosts are the bats. Another parasite afflicting the bat pelt is the bat bug. Yes, both us and bats have to deal with bedbugs. Bats clearly share some parasites with all the other mammals, but there's one which has exclusively adapted to ride the hides of the skin flyers, bat flies. This image might make you queasy, but that thing attached to the bat's face is a bat fly, and they don't actually hug the faces of their hosts, at least not all the time. Let's take a few steps back. Bat fly is a common term used to describe any blood-sucking ectoparasitic miscreant that catches a meal and a ride on the hide of the flippy flappies. This means there are a few different kinds of critters that are flies but are either related or somewhat related to one another that can be categorized as bat flies. The main bat fly groups belong to the mega hefty group HIPPOBOSCOIDEA. For those who were 100% wondering, HIPPOBOSCOIDEA is what fancy taxonomists call a superfamily. It's called that because it's a family of families within bigger levels of classifications. This kind of nitpicky stuff happens a lot with living things, but particularly with insects. Getting back to the parts everyone cares about, the main two flavors of bat flies are the NYCTERIBIIDAE and the STREBLIDS. NYCTERIBIIDAE is the most speciose, having a working total of 275 known species of nasty bloodsuckers. STREBLIDS, on the other hand, is full of about 230 known species. Surprising pretty much just me, these suckers are found worldwide wherever there are bats. The STREBLIDS are more concentrated in the Western Hemisphere, while the NYCTERIBIIDES are more common in the Eastern Hemisphere. I mentioned before that these are the two main flavors. That's because these two groups are the most closely related bat flies. But there is another group more distant, MYSTACINOBIIDAE. The MYSTACINOBIID bat flies are from New Zealand and New Zealand only, meaning they are endemic. This is almost definitely because the bats of New Zealand are endemic to the island as well. So both the bats and their batfly parasites landed on the island long ago and drifted from the rest of the world's population of bats and bat flies, to the point at which they're no longer that closely related. Cool, huh? How the hell do these things work? Since there are so many species and groups of bat flies, and since each are actually way cooler than I could have imagined going into this project, I want to discuss each of them. That being said, they do share some general traits. For instance, they all have 6 limbs, as they are true insects. All have lost pieces of anatomy that regular flies take for granted, like eyes, and wings, and heads. They're all translucent browns, light tans, and yellows in color. They have sharp, backwards-pointing quill-like hairs at each segmentation of their bodies to help them swim through their host's fur. All bat flies have a pair of strongly recurved, nasty-looking talons on each foot that they use to hook onto their host's fur and skin. Their abdomen is swollen, and the head is reduced to like a little spot. All have become super flat from top to bottom, like what you see with most ectoparasites. Lice, ticks, and fleas have all become flattened to help them remain attached to their host, or for swimming through their host's fur and feathers really easily. These bat flies have also changed from the normal fly body plan in how their limbs are arranged. Normal flies have spindly limbs, where the front ones face forwards, the side ones face inwards and somewhat forwards, and the back ones face backwards. Bat flies say hell nah, and their limbs are kind of oriented sideways and out in all directions, making them look a lot like spiders. Most also retain the ability to suck blood, but some are a little different, and I'll tell you about those weirdos here in a bit. Their reproduction is beyond bizarre. In most bat flies, the female rears up to 3 larvae at a time inside her. That's right, she doesn't lay eggs in the same way many other insects do. She keeps her brood inside her until they've reached the 3rd instar stage. This stage is the point in their life cycle when the wee baby is almost ready to pupate and morph into an adult. What's weirder is that the larvae are fed by the mother bat fly through milk-like secretions that ooze out of a so-called milk gland. So-called because it literally cannot be the exact same substance or organ we mammals use. Yeah, insects that produce milk for the hatchlings. What's next? Birds? Oh, right, they do that too. Once the maggot babies are ready to pupate, Mama Batfly climbs off her host and scuttles down to the bottom of wherever the bat hosts were roosting. If it's a cave, the mother bugger crawls into some nice, warm, toxic guano. If the bats were roosting in a forest, tree, or human settlement, the insect progenitor tiptoes down to the ground. The big mama releases her spawn into the substrate of the bat roost, and they almost immediately pupate. The larvae secrete a cocoon around themselves and break down their entire body and recombobulate it into that of an adult batfly. Rather similar to fleas, check out my video on that if interested, the bat flies rip open their pupa cocoons and immediately book it for their first host. The time at which the new bat flies emerge from their slumber may depend on the availability of hosts, like in fleas. They may wait in their goo sack until they can sense warm, nourishing bat bodies nearby, and then spring open their sleeping bags and race to their yummy mobile homes. Nothing but NYCTERIBIIDES. The NYCTERIBIIDES are the most derived and specialized of the bat flies. All NYCTERIBIID batfly species have completely lost their wings in exchange for staying on their hosts for basically their entire lives. The flight muscles which once held up the glassy wings of the normal flies are now atrophied. This has resulted in a much smaller thorax than in normal flies, which owes to the spider-like appearance. This reduction in muscles towards the head end of the body has also forced the head and limbs into the thorax, just like spiders. They have coincidentally and convergently evolved a body plan similar to spiders because they don't need wings and don't really need much in the way of a head. But they still have one. Their head protrudes from the top of their thorax and is folded back against it when at rest. When it's time for sucking, the little beastie unfolds its head a full 180 degrees to whip out its feeding instruments. These guys range in size from about 1 to 5 millimeters. One of the other features of the NYCTERIBIIDES that sets them apart from the rest is their eyes. They have highly reduced compound eyes. I think I may have mentioned these guys are blind, but the NYCTERIBIIDES take it a bit too far and in a weird way. Many of the NYCTERIBIIDES have exactly no visible eyes. Some sport rudimentary eye spots, which are generally only good for telling the difference between light and dark. What good is that, you might be wondering? Well, it's better than having no way of knowing the difference between light and dark, so there. Strange STREBLIDS. STREBLIDS are different from the others in their variability. There's some STREBLIDS that have functional wings that allow them to fly from one host to another. There's some that have wings, but they don't work great. Some have reduced wings that don't work great, while others have no wings at all. Another thing that's variable among these vermin is their eyes. Like the other flies, these guys have reduced eyes, but the level to which they are reduced differs from species to species. Some have rudimentary eye spots, no eyes at all, or slightly functional eyes. Their bodies can be flattened from top to bottom, like lice and ticks, or from side to side, like in fleas. The legs can also vary from short and robust to long and pencilly. Most of these guys are found in tropical and subtropical regions. The species of the genus Ascodipteron are pretty grotesque. They secondarily become endoparasites. If you've been following me on my journey through the parasites, you'll remember the difference between endo and ectoparasites. But to refresh, ectoparasites live on the outside of the host, and endoparasites are on the inside. After making sweet, sweet parasite love, the females of the species in the Ascodipteron genus drop off their wings and legs and burrow, maggot-like, into the skin of their batty hosts. There they reproduce and lay their eggs. That's literally the worst thing ever. Same thing those damn beetles from the Mummy did, and one of the things that scared me the most as a kid watching it. Okay, next. Some species of STREBLIDS have combs on their heads called ctenidia. Ctenidia is the term also used to describe comb-like organs on ticks and fleas, so fancy that. The species that have these ctenidia use them as holdfast to keep their somehow plump yet wrinkly bodies velcroed on to their batty beasts of burden. Terrible, no good, very bad kiwi parasites, MYSTACINOBIIDS. I said we'd come back to these guys, and here we are. The MYSTACINOBIIDS are the New Zealand bat flies. The family has only one species, MYSTACINOBIIA zealandica. Just in how that one species of STREBLID is super bizarre, the New Zealand bat flies take things in a whole nother direction. Externally, they don't look a whole lot different from the other bat flies. They have the same 6 hairy legs ending in recurved talons. They have combs for sticking to their bats. They're blind with heavily reduced eyes. Both sexes are wingless. They're a bit bigger than the others, ranging from 4 to 9 millimeters in length. But it's their behavior that makes them stand out. These bat flies differ in not having to rely solely on blood as their food source. They feed primarily on guano. Yep, they eat crap. On top of that, these suckers live in colonies. Females lay their eggs in huge shared nurseries of eggs and larvae, like a hippy-dippy ant commune in the trunks of trees where their bat hosts love to roost. The eggs require incubation temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, thus their place in the bat dung. The females are doting parents and will groom their larvae and each other to make sure everyone is safe and clean. But wait, there's more. The social gregariousness of these insects is almost like it's in the beginning evolutionary stages that might lead to a caste society, like you see in bees, wasps, and ants. Some of the males, who are larger than the females, live past their normal reproductive age, which is unusual in general, but will use this bot time to act as colony guards in a soldier caste-like role. These warrior grandpas literally buzz off dangers. They vibrate their bodies with such a high frequency that it keeps bats from coming too close to the colony. They also use the vibration when aboard a bat host for a quick suck, as their bat hosts are insectivores. The New Zealand batflies use their bat hosts as steeds to carry them from one colony to another, so that they don't become inbred in one area. Up to 10 of these rather large flies can be found swimming through the fur of a single bat when it leaves its roost. It makes evolutionary sense that these flies no longer rely directly on their furry friend for crimson sustenance. New Zealand is home to only 2 species of bats, the lesser short-tailed and long-tailed bats. There were once more species of bats, and there were some regional subspecies of the 2 bigger species, but overall, New Zealand just doesn't have a lot of prime bat real estate readily available for parasitic invasion. Can't believe it's amber. Fossil Streblid? Everyone loves amber, right? It's cool, beautiful, and meaningful. It's an ultralight gemstone made of fossilized tree resin. The series of events required to get tree resin to fossilize is hard enough to comprehend, let alone those events that result in trapped organisms surviving almost unchanged within the hard citrine substance for millions of years. Now, imagine how even more minuscule the chances are that a blood-sucking batfly manages to get frozen in time the same way your average fly would. The first batfly found encased in amber was described in 2012 as Anischnomya stegosoma. Its fossil comes from the Miocene-aged rock deposits of the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean, right next to Cuba. The 20 to 15 million-year-old amber preserves just about everything of the batfly. Thanks to its original translucentness, the critter is virtually see-through in its saffron coffin. This particular little sucker belongs to the still-living Streblidae family and is replete with all the usual fixins, plus a pair of still usable wings and super rudimentary compound eyes. The amber preserves no trace of the critter's host. But it's a batfly, come on, of course it sucked bats. Since the frozen parasite isn't much different than living ones, it doesn't offer much information on the evolution of batflies, but it's what's inside that counts. Within the gut and salivary ducts of the tawny jailed insect were the oocysts, or egg sac, of the Plasmodiid Vertebrabris ovatus. This gastrointestinal hitchhiker is a malaria vector. That's right, these parasites have parasites. Parasites on parasites. The gut hitchhiker of the extinct amberized batfly isn't technically a parasite since it's just hitching a ride in the gut, but batflies are susceptible to fungal infection. Labulbenialis is a group of microscopic parasitic fungi that infiltrate the exoskeletons of many groups of arthropods. These fungi produce a thallus that penetrates the exoskeleton of the victim from the outside before doing its dirty work to the insides of its host. The greater biology of the fungi and their relationship with the batflies is generally unknown, and each time a group of researchers goes out to collect samples, they tend to find new species of fungi sticking out of the bodies of batflies. As grotesque and horrifying as most parasites are, I kinda like the batflies. Yeah, I'm sure the bats don't, and I cannot imagine how annoying it would be to have such large critters sliding through your hair and biting you.
I just think they're neat.
The New Zealand batflies shows us that even a nasty parasite can change its ways and be a normal animal. What do you think of the batflies? Let me know in the comments below. Give me suggestions for more parasites to do videos on. For more interesting stories about nature, the history of life, or what goes bump in the night, subscribe, hit the bell icon for updates, like this video, and drop a comment in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Special thanks goes to my elephant tier patrons, Thea Svensson, Staniforth Hopkins, Dinosaur, Chris Frampton, Biotaverse, Arda Bayer, and Christoph Hubbinger, as well as my Tyrannosaur patrons, Iron Bladesman, Henry Brennan, Danny Van Heck, and Dana Manchester.